G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we're going to be going through team structure in preparation for round 0 and how things are lining up. Where can we change some things if we need to? Where do we need to lock in? Let's go!
Hodge has done it from nowhere. Lifting the goal from inside the 30. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty.
G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I am your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy. And today, you can see the blank chair next to me. I am joined by a very special guest today. I'll let him just introduce himself. Come on in, special guest.
G'day, Mitch. Thanks for having me on, mate. It's me, Jaden Popowski. It's an absolute pleasure to be on the show, mate.
What a pleasant surprise.
Thank you for having me on, mate. And I just wanted to say it again. It's me, Jaden Popowski. You can obviously tell that by the authentic Jaden Popowski face that's on my face.
Obviously,
which is
I was never questioning it.
Correct. And just even to sort of show, I do love stats. I've just got my calculator up there on my phone, which I always have ready to go. So that just further affirms that it's me, Jaden Popowski.
Well,
how are you tonight, mate?
I'm good, mate. Well, first I want to say thank you for putting me in your all fantasy content creators team, mate. That's quite an honour.
Well, mate, no dramas. It's part of the reason I'm on here actually this evening. It's because I'm rethinking the lineup a little bit. When I had a little bit more of a think about it, I thought, why would I put a guy in defence who defends like Nick Martin? So your spot in the team could actually be in jeopardy.
Oh, no.
And I've considered that perhaps there's somebody that I've missed in the team.
Surely not.
Well,
the stats man you are.
This is correct. I've gone back and I've done a deeper dig into the stats, and I think Rojo could be a smoky. I found out that in terms of his dad chokes, they work 60% of the time, every time. So it's a big stat for you. I'm really considering getting him into the team.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, Jaden.
Even if it's just in a vest role, I think that it's really important that we get him in there for team morale. So
absolutely, I'm all there for you. I'm on the Luke Rojo train. Although
beautiful.
We'll get him in there. Let's see what the audience has to think. I don't think anyone really stood up for Luke, so I don't think he was really missed in the community.
Well, I think I did hear as well that there was a shock retirement post-selection, so it might open up a little bit of space in that forward line. But look, this is the thing. I just want to come on and make that very public apology. Again, it's me, Jaden Popowski, calculator. You can see here. So, look, I think I'm going to nip back off. I'm on the next flight out, so I'll jump off here and we'll get Rojo back on. Hey,
thanks for your help, mate.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on the podcast, mate. Much appreciated. Okay, I'll nip over here.
Good luck for the season, mate. All right.
Thank you, mate. Oh, thanks, Jaden. Appreciate you coming on, mate. We'll swap you there. Thanks, mate. Oh, thanks for that. Beautiful.
Oh, mate, you just missed him? Jaden was just on the podcast, mate.
It was good to have him on, mate. I think he had some pretty important stuff to say. So
nothing really. Nah, I think he was just saying good day.
I actually overheard him saying that that he might be looking to get me at his team, which is positive. I'll have to. I started creating the old Jaden Popowski dartboard at home, so I might have to wind that back because he's got me in the team. So thank you, Jaden. It's much appreciated.
Of course. I mean, how can anyone really leave you off, really? Because all the good you do to the community.
I knew it was an oversight, so I just thought I'd get in touch with Jaden, and he was happy enough to jump on the podcast. So we really appreciate that.
Man, that is going to be a record for the longest bit in podcasting history. 4 minutes in, and we are still talking shit.
In all seriousness, Jade, we love your work, mate. But seriously, at least put me at a vest.
Get him in there, man. Yeah, the dad joke's got to be worth something. And you don't get bits like that from anyone else in the community.
What are we actually talking about today? Because all I've thought about is that bit. So.
Okay, yeah. Well, no, we're talking structures today, mate, because it's something that I think is... I guess we talk about it in passing a lot, but I want to spend an entire podcast just doing a bit of a deep dive in terms of, I guess, the options when it comes to structures. We talk about rookies defining our structures a lot, but what does that actually mean? So that's what we're going to be diving into today. Is there a structure developing as, like, I guess, the popular structure? Yep. Is there maybe some weaknesses we can poke holes in that? Is there something maybe we can look to do better? So that's what we're going through today.
It's certainly been awesome to listen to a couple of the other podcasts out there because I feel like you find when you start getting into your team, you kind of revert back to what feels comfortable, what feels safe.
Yeah.
And then when you hear a couple of the other people on the podcast say how I'm experimenting with X structure, Y structure, it kind of opens your mind up a little bit as well. So it'd be good to have a chat.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through each line kind of individually, but also try and also talk about how they will also connect with, okay, maybe taking a haircut in one line to bolster another line and why you'd be looking to do that or why not, and different reasons such as that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start as we always do, as all people do when they start opening up AFL Fantasy. You start in the defense, the top of the page, and I am finding that the defense line, difference to the early in the season, now with a few injuries and things like that, I am finding it the most difficult line to get a structure that I'm happy with because of the lack of rookies, but also just the general lack of value options as well, with players that have been injured, potentially not being there round one, and we'll talk about Zachy Williams soon, but... What are you seeing with, I guess, like a structure that you're rolling with first up? And has that changed throughout the preseason, or what's your thoughts there?
It has, and I want to shout out Jeppo when he jumped on the podcast, because since we had Jep on talking about the lack of rookie options in defence, that's completely changed my thinking about how I'm looking at it. So, I was up until that point just like, Curtin can be my D6, no problems. And then the lack of anything coming behind him in terms of job security and then like even scoring, to me has now stood out. So every structure I've had since that podcast has had Nick Caulfield as my D6. Yep. Like you said, the question mark that now kind of pops up is the fact that Zach Williams, a guy that a lot of us have been sort of penciling in there as a D5, D6 even for some people, it hasn't played a pracky game just yet.
No, he hasn't played a pracky game. I think the word is he might be playing VFL. Like, he's not named for tonight's game. We're recording this as the Demons and Carlton game is underway. So, we won't be talking about that game specifically on this podcast, but by the time you listen to it, that game would have been played, and he did not feature in that game. So if he's going to be there round zero, he's going to be in there without us having any sights on him at AFL level. And if he's not there round zero, well, then you're really going to struggle to pick him, and I think you probably can't. So going to other options like Marcus Windhager, like he was someone that had sat in my team for a long time because he was cheap and had a potential midfield role, which we did see, but broke his hand. Heath Chapman was someone that was there for a long time. Marty Hall, we also considered a lot at D6 at times as well. All these guys have just tripped over at the finish line, so they're not really there and available for us. So a lot of those guys that like that 400, 450 and cheaper. Yeah. There's not a whole lot to choose from. So I guess this begs the question is, do we then have to pay up, or are there other options around those price that we are going to? And if we are going to them, are we just doing it because that's the structure we've been through this whole time? Or do we need to think, okay, we can't force a square peg into a round hole. We've got to switch it up.
That's the way I feel is the only way is up. But like you said, if you're spending that much coin in defence, it leaves you a little bit thin elsewhere. I guess in a way we're somewhat fortunate this season that there's a lot of scope to speculate on forwards, which can save some cash to be spent in the defence. But I very much don't want to find myself late in the preseason going to a player that I haven't even considered all preseason just for the fact that, Zach Williams
is...
Exactly. So, I don't know, you go up into that next bracket, obviously we're talking guys like Elliot Yeo, we're talking guys like Jordan Clark, who's poked his head up in a match sim. We want to see more in this next upcoming game as well. Kadeen Coleman, but it's starting to get pretty expensive for guys that you're looking at D5.
So these guys are all priced around that 70 mark, and for them to be worthwhile picks, you'd want to see them get close to a 90 kind of price tag, which is getting fairly close to that premium defender level. So it is a lot to ask. It's probably easier to jump from 50 points to 70 points than it is to go from 70 to 90, because then you're getting into that elite kind of territory. So you are asking a lot. What we might do, maybe while we throw the screen up, and we'll just have a look at. I guess we've got a sample team on the screen here for people looking over on YouTube as well. We'll talk it through for the podcast as well. But this is just a bunch of what we would describe as like a popular team out there with, again, a lot of the reactions to some of the preseason games. Harry Sheasel sitting there at D1, Tom Stewart D2, Hayden Young D3, Elliot Yeo D4. We do have Zachy Williams there at the moment. So what we would try to do to fix this situation if we get rid of Zachy Williams at this stage, we're not left with a whole lot of cash to fix it up. So at the moment, this, again, team is filled with a bunch of cheap bench options and popular players in there. When we get rid of Zach Williams, the only way we can go sideways is to someone. I think there's a player, what's his name? Is it Massimo? He's a guy that you could maybe, some people are talking about him, 467. So even in this team, we still have to find some kind of cash.
Yeah. And again, I think for you and I, at least, that represents going to someone that hasn't really
I've never really
radar.
considered it. He's also he played a decent game last time, but there was no Carl Amon. So I'm not ruling it out, but it does feel like a bit of like a forced kind of a move. Another player we also might consider would be a Connor Buderick, but again, you're trying to find an extra 60k or so to make that work. Plus, he still has that early buy round. You've got that moist run that the Suns have as well.
You do.
So maybe you're keen on him, maybe you're not. But outside of those options, which again I'm not super thrilled with, I don't love a whole lot of them. So this is where we're going to go to that next price tag, which, like you said, is that Elliot Yeo, Hayden Young, maybe a little bit more, but then those Jordan Clarks. Who's the Adelaide guy?
Hinge.
Hinge.
I mean, the question you always have to ask yourself is, like, where is it going to compromise you elsewhere? So, I mean, if you have a look at sort of the forward line there, you've got guys Flanders, Adams. Are you looking at, obviously, going down to a guy like Fisher, who's also a popular pick that then frees up a little bit of cash in that regard as well? Or you've got Grundy. Can you go to Xeri to free up cash to bolster your defense? So I guess those are kind of questions that each individual have to kind of ask himself and see whether that's the right option for them.
Yeah, so we'll come back to that throughout the podcast today and sort of have a bit of a fix around when we start talking about some of those other like strategies you can do to free up that cash.
Yeah.
But while we're still on the defense line, let's talk rookies in terms of, are we, like in that team, we had some cheap options on there.
Yeah.
Some of us are maybe still rolling with the Daniel Curtin on our bench. He didn't get onto the game very early in the match sim last week. So, and he's a bit more expensive in that I think he's around 280.
Kind of begs the question of job security. So
security, scoring capacity, you're paying a bit more for him. Do we spend down and just get like Toby Pink? Like, we've kind of joked about him most of the season, but he's still kind of there.
Yeah, and I mean, if we want to go, I think he's similarly priced, but if we want to go to a little bit cheaper, Gibcus, we think he has good job security at Richmond, but there's obviously the hamstring issues that he's coming back from, hoping to make a better tilt of it this year, but the scoring we know is not going to be there.
None of these guys are going to want on field.
Yes, so it's it really kind of does beg that question, especially if we don't get Zach Williams, is kind of where we go there. Can I ask you what I think is a somewhat interesting question as well?
Yeah.
There's a couple of people that are floating, ourselves included, picking these potential DPP defenders in the midfield.
Yeah, I was going to get to this. This is good.
So looking at guys like Nick Martin, looking at guys like Carl Amon, who we hope to see on the weekend, how does that influence the structure of your defense?
So I've been thinking about this as well, because if we're loading up on defenders and say we are going, a Sheasel, Stewart, Hayden Young, Elliot Yeo, or even, Jordan Clark, Elliot Yeo, and Elliot Yeo is sitting there at D5, we would consider like 4 of those guys, if things go the way we would hope they do, being players that we would hold to the bye.
And there's the crazy potential for 5 of those guys in a perfect world.
And if Yeo goes good, plus you've got a Colby McKercher, which we're all picking. He has the potential to do what Sheasel did last year and stick in our teams for a long time.
Yeah.
If you are picking a Nick Martin or a Carl Amon, they are, ideally going to eventually end up in your defensive line. Plus, we're going to want to get Nick Dacos in at some point as the clear number 1 defender. Like, how many defenders are we now going to have? And are we going to be too loaded in our defense that maybe we are sacrificing a midfield spot to have a defender there? I think that lends me more to not shopping at the top price.
Yeah.
So I've been sort of weighing up, okay, can I start a Sheasel and a Stewart who you're not really picking for value.
Yeah.
You're picking them because they're top 6 guys. And so that kind of thinking, if I am thinking eventually I'm going to have a Nick Martin or a McKercher or both guys go back there, and I have a Yeo, for example, at D5, there's not enough room. So I want to take and use that opportunity to take a few more speculative picks that I'm okay trading out down the line a little bit more if it does go a bit hairy. Because I know I've got those other guys hopefully coming back there. And if I need to, I can trade that player that maybe didn't work out, or an Elliot Yeo, for example. I'm happy with running the gauntlet, I don't want to test fate anymore, trade him up to a midfielder, for example, then I'm doing that. But if I lock myself into like a Sheasel and a Stewart and a Young, all three of those guys I would want to keep there. And I would have a hard time trading them out for a midfielder, which might limit some of the options, I think. And yeah, just put me in a tough spot, I think.
The other thing that I think is slightly interesting too is, let's say you do go super deep with Yo and Clark as well. They're not necessarily guys that you're looking to flip quickly either. They might be the last guys you trade in a perfect world. Like if Yo and Clark are going thereabouts, close to the top 6 defenders, they're going to be guys that are priorities later, which then it begs the question, if Martin gets DPP, Amon gets DPP early, it's like you said, it's getting busy back there, so it's really interesting.
The thing is, though, that I do, and we'll talk about pivoting a lot in this one, by going those guys that you're maybe less committed to when you're selecting them. If there is a guy that we haven't seen, for example, or haven't, maybe it is D'Ambrosio and he does pop. We're not confident enough to start with him, but you see a couple of rounds and he's going off. Going that guy that, a Clark or, like a Hinge or something that you're not completely committed to because you haven't selected him as a top 6 guy. Even if he's going okay, trading him down, freeing up that cash to bolster something else might be an easier move to make than trading a premium that you've paid up for to go down to him. I feel like you're just a little bit less attached to those kind of players.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
So I feel like it just gives you a little bit more freedom to be flexible if an option comes up that you didn't foresee.
Yeah, for sure.
I think,
let us know in the comments, of course, what you're thinking for your defensive lines as well. And also probably a good opportunity to thank everyone, because I think today we got to 2K.
2,000 subscribers. I got all caught up in the Popowski bit at the start. But yes, thank you everyone.
That's a stat, 2,000. So.
There's a stat for you, Jaden. 2,000 subscribers. No, we love you, Jaden. But just get a look at the team. Thank you very much, guys. Onwards and upwards, though. Charging for 3K, Luke. Let's go.
In all seriousness, but I'm very, very appreciative of all the support, and
really
we always say, but it's just awesome to be able to be on here talking shit and having discussions.
Yeah,
so.
Can't believe there's 2,000 of you guys out there that listen to us talk shit. But we are blessed. It's a fun thing to do. Let's go into the midfield.
Let's do it.
Talking about structure.
Yes.
Let's start at M5 and M6.
Oh, this is where a lot of my headaches are coming.
It's a very interesting spot, right? And I guess this also ties into the rookie discussion. So they're kind of two discussions in one. Like, are you going with the 3 rookies and having one mid-pricer at M5, having 2 rookies having 2 mid-prices at that M5, M6? And also, I guess the question is, what kind of mid-price, what price bracket are you looking at? Like, I know you're a fan of someone like a George Wardlaw.
Yep.
Henry Hustwaite's kind of put his name up a little bit more recently. Plus, we've got those Nick Martins, Carl Amons, Matt Crouches, Ollie Wines sitting there a little bit more expensive at $700K. Where do you see the best structure at the moment in a perfect world that you would like to be sitting at?
Yeah, a lot of the structure that I've had throughout the preseason has been at D5, one of those, like what we might call a more expensive mid-pricer. So someone in that like Martin, Amon, Crouch, I think is slightly cheaper than those guys, maybe. Or is he about?
Very close. I think 730, Martin's 770. So.
And then at the D6 position, someone a little bit cheaper, sort of more in the Wardlaw. And then, like you said, Hustwaite's kind of put his name up. But something that I thought was really interesting that you kind of brought my attention to more on our previous podcast
on the team reveal,
was the fact that obviously if you do go with a cheaper guy at that M6 spot, it maybe doesn't leave you the room to pivot like we talked about with Minimonk when he came on the show. It's easier to pivot down than it is up in a lot of ways. It is,
yeah. Especially when, like I said, you've got a number of those options to choose from. And I think that 700 to 800K bracket is the sweet spot this season. I could build an argument that all of Nick Martin, Carl Amon, Matt Crouch, and Ollie Wines all do what we need them to do and go 95.
Yeah.
Chances are it won't happen that way. Normally, you have these options and maybe 1 or 2 of them does that. But if you've at least got a couple of lottery tickets, as Mini Monk called it, you can quickly just get across the guy that is popping.
Yeah.
Whereas it's a bit more of a restructure if you're going and having to find another 200K to get up to Carl Amon from a George Wardlaw, for example. Whereas George Wardlaw might be the guy, like it might be him.
Yeah.
But outside of him, there's not too many other options. So say, for example, if you do start with a Crouch at that M6, it's easy enough if George Wardlaw is popping off that you just go down to him
Yeah.
and use that extra K to do something else. Maybe it is in your defence or something like that.
Else.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the M1 through M4, because you and I, obviously a bit of group think involved as well, is we've been kind of going with the like one out and out guy that we see as a captain option, and then guys that pretty much haven't left our teams, Butters, Steele, and LDU.
Yes.
Have you heard other people speak differently about that?
Yeah, well, I have heard a few people, and a lot of people are going with that sort of a bit more guns and rookies approach with obviously the best 18 and trying to hit those ceiling scores. So I can see some validity to that. I still want to, and Selby's talked about this before, and I think it's really the way I'm approaching it this way is trying to build your team from the value options up rather than going from the big dogs down. And it sounds simple enough, but I think it actually is very different in terms of the way you think of it. So if I'm trying to think of players who can be top 8 but are cheap, I'm blocking the way those guys in first, and if I have money left over and I can afford a big dog and they're just there for the captaincy, then I do that. Whereas I'm not picking my captain option first and then trying to work out the rest.
Squeeze in someone.
Yeah, so when I do that, a lot of the times I am left with those options that you said. I do still personally want to have a player that I am very happy and safe to put a captaincy on those first few rounds, because it's all good and well to say, there'll be captaincy options coming from somewhere, but we don't know where. You know, last year it was...
Based on tonight's scoring in the game, you might have one in the next line we talk about.
Well, so. I've been saying that. I told you, man. But anyway, yes, we do.
I was listening.
We do. But yeah, I want to have options, right? So I usually like to have at least 2 guys that I feel pretty comfortable.
Yep.
One of them usually will come from your midfield. So I don't mind personally going up.
back there as well. So.
That's true. Yeah, he's always a go-to lock-in captain. So a lot of people who are saying, no one priced over 105. I think you can do that. You can go a 110 guy.
Okay.
I probably wouldn't be shopping at the Bont price tag, but 110, 111, 112, I think it's okay as long as you've got value elsewhere and you are confident that that person is a captain week in, week out.
A little bit off topic. Do you think I'm being pessimistic to say that it would be pretty lucky if Butters, Steele, and LDU all do what we hope for? Am I being pessimistic there?
Look,
I'd consider myself very lucky.
Shock me, but the good thing about that price tag is those players are not unknowns. Like they're not George Wardlaws. Like these are proven guns.
Yeah.
And 2 of them. Well, Jack Steele's been there before. Zach Butters is a rising star. LDU's a rising star. Like these guys they're the best midfielders in their teams, essentially.
Like you said, we can go down to the guy who's popping if need be.
Yeah, and you've got options. So, I think there's a little bit less speculation with those players compared to the other guys. So I do feel more confident that they will all at least do decently well. And even if they just hold their price because they are a little bit more expensive, they are still, on any given week, if they go average of 100, they'll pop 120 every second week or so. So it's useful to have.
Let's pop back over to the screen and potentially talk about like a 3 rookie structure, because it's something that I've heard getting around a little bit. I don't know how confident I feel. So let's maybe
tie this back into the defensive line, because this could be a solution for people if they want to go up. So say for example you're happy with a Matt Crouch, but you're not sold on those halfback types or Ollie Wines. You then move a Colby McKercher, who's got the captaincy badge right now. That's how much faith we have in him. And you move Jeremy Sharp on field. He's the guy that we're sort of talking about here. He's the sort of the pivot option. That means then you're going down to, say, someone like a Jai Clark, for example, on your bench. So you've essentially freed up about 300K going from Wardlaw down to Clark.
Yep.
So using that 300K, now we have the funds to go and get that 700, 600K defender. So whether that be someone like a Kadeen Coleman or your boy Jordan Clark, that could definitely be an option for people who previously were in that structure where they had the 2 rookies. And I've even got more cash left over now to maybe get rid of some of these dodgy rookies like a Shaw Manor, who I don't expect to be there. Maybe Ethan Phillips can go up to someone like a Gibkiss or something like that. That to me, compared to the previous structure, feels a little bit better.
It does if Williams isn't what we've been expecting him to be. However,
Zach Williams.
Yes. Do you know what I mean? If we could have Williams, I'd feel better having Williams than Sharp on field and But obviously that's the unknown at the moment.
The risk of this one here, so you're swapping out a Wardlaw Williams for a Sharp and Clark. So you're going two guys who are mid-prices, cheaper options to one guy who's closer to the top, one guy who's cheaper. So a bit more of that guns and rookie strategy. But if you think both guys are best 22, that's pretty solid. You're probably going to get more cash generation from a Jeremy Sharp. The flip side, however, is now you're bringing another guy onto your bench. So this is where I do like the two rookies because you've got these two guys here, and if Sharp's on your bench, you don't have to shop around on those maybe more speculative players that are maybe vestable on your bench, and your cash generation is maybe a bit more secure. So that's the risk, the downside.
And we'll obviously talk about the rucks and the forwards in a second as well, but just looking at that, if I was to free up some cash, I don't think I would free up cash with three rookies, just my personal preference. I think in this particular lineup that we're looking at now, I think I'd try and free up cash in the forward line.
Yeah, that's definitely another play. Or you could even free it up in the ruck line because we've got two cheaper rucks, but there is an even cheaper ruck that we could go to. So go into Max Gawn down to a Tristan Xerri, for example.
Jesus, we're freeing up
a lot.
We can't go Gorney away. Gorney's got to stay after the big performance.
And a Grundy, who everyone's locked into their side. If you go him down to a Tristan Xerri, you also bank another 100k there. So that might be another option. Say, for example, if you wanted to get, maybe with a few other tweaks, littler moves here and there, you can maybe make that cash to get that Jordan Clark move in. But
well, that's a good segue. Let's get our delicious mugs back on the screen and let's talk some rucks in more detail.
Yeah. So the ruck option line. So we're talking. Basically, now we've got the cheaper options that we had on the screen there, but some people are still considering the set and forget, or at least one of those boys there. Marshall seems to be gaining popularity a lot recently, just because of how he finished the end of last season. And he looks good in the practice matches. All that's fine. I still personally think with the issues we're facing in other lines, in our forwards and defenders especially, you're going to need that cash. And with the value options maybe a bit less confident in those lines, you bank away the value that seems super right there. It's in your face. These guys are value. So I feel super confident in those. So you can do what you want, but I personally would be going.
You can do what you want.
You can go. I'd be personally going one of those value three. I can't really get behind personally spending up for either English or Marshall this season.
Can we talk pivoting in the rucks as well? Because obviously there'll be people who think, hey, Grundy's value, X-Aries value, Gawn's obviously value, but they might go the cheaper options. Does that leave you up the creek without a paddle if Gawn pops off and you just can't get to him? The thing is, you talk about potentially guys that can take your season away from you if you don't have them to start. What if Max Gawn comes out and just averages 120 for the first?
Yeah.
It's not even outside of the realms of possibility.
Very, very possible. Very possible.
So do you almost have to safeguard yourself against getting Gawned?
Well, this is why I'm such a big Gawn guy, because I see him as a guy that can do that. And the other thing that you can do, and I'm not saying that you plan to do this, but the option presents itself to you with the Max Gawn having the round 6 early buy and Grundy having the round 5 early buy. Say, for example, you get to that round 6, trade him to Grundy, and you don't miss any of your ruck lines. You still get someone who's maybe still coming up in price. Depending on what's happening, it might be a cash grab to fix something else up. Now, I'm not saying you plan for that, but it gives you more flexibility.
Yeah.
Whereas if you start Grundy and not Gawn, you don't have that option because obviously Gawn has his buy after Grundy. So there's that. Obviously, if you're just strictly trying to save as much cash as possible, I can admit that Grundy has a higher upside based on his price than Gawn does, simply because he's just a whole bunch cheaper.
Yeah.
But it's not always about that, I don't think. So, but again, I do think all three of those options are good picks, really.
Well, let's have a play then, because if we do take Grundy, let's say, down to Cherry. Let's see what that frees up for us in terms of structure and what we might be able to...
So Grundy down to Cherry gives us that extra bit. So now we've got 171k sitting there. We already fixed up our defensive line. So say we're pretty happy with that. Let's maybe see if we can move this one back and maybe get someone back into the midfield. That gives us 408k.
Does that give us a Hust weight? I know it's...
I don't think it quite does.
Quite.
So a Hust weight is 429. So we're about 20k short of there. So if that was the only move you made, maybe you still prefer Grundy and you really don't want to move any of these guys, maybe in that case, it's not worth it. And you go back up to Grundy and you go with that 3 rookie lineup. But say, for example, you're not 100% sold on like a Taylor Adams.
Well, you might look at Taylor Adams, James Jordan, Sam Flanders in the same forward line and see that we've got 3 buys there.
Yeah, plus if you had Grundy there before as well.
So perhaps you look at it like you're about to say and you're a little bit flexible on Taylor Adams.
So maybe Taylor Adams goes down to someone like, and it's actually not that big of a saving, but it's enough to kind of, okay, now I can get my Henry Hustwaite if I wanted to, go that way. Maybe I can now do a Finlay McRae who didn't play much there, and you can get him down to Caleb Windsor. Okay, so just these little savings here, 504k. I'm getting closer to a Wardlaw now, who is, what's he at? 552. So I need to make another 50k. The last thing we can maybe do here is go a Nat 5 down to someone like, where is he? Mackenzie, who is a bit cheaper.
Not your boy McDonald. You almost clicked on McDonald.
Nearly there. And George Wardlaw now becomes...
That's not 0, is it?
Oh, close. 4K off. So, yeah. So now I can afford George Wardlaw by taking those haircuts. So it's a structure change kind of, but it's not really. Like, I've still got that cheap R2.
Yep.
So I haven't gone from like a premium to a mid-pricer. I've gone mid-pricer to a cheaper mid-pricer. Fisher's still in that similar bracket to what a Taylor Adams was.
Yep.
Maybe not quite the upside, but you're saving yourself around 5 buy. And again, you've gone mid-pricer to a cheaper mid-pricer, and I've been able to keep my 2 rookie midfield structure and get a George Wardlaw on. So
you wouldn't believe it. The team's starting to look like Mitch's team.
It's starting to look a bit
How
more
did that
like
happen?
Yeah, but it's just like, I guess it just comes down to, do you want to just take, how confident are you on those like little haircuts?
Yes.
Like, are you really gung-ho on getting a 5 in?
Yeah.
And if that's your opinion, then maybe it's not worth doing all these little haircuts. If you kind of see them all as a bit of a, they're all a similar value to you, then I see that as maybe a better way to go, because then you probably do preserve the ability to do some more pivoting that way, rather than having to do big changes and going guys way down, guys way up, to get a guy that does pop. So I guess it just depends on how you see those differences.
Last thing I want to ask you about the ruck line is R3. Because it's obviously a popular notion, just people talking about different strategies there. Well, how much are you willing to pay? Do you want the red dot?
I mean, the Jordan Sweet thing was there for a while. It seems to have gone away recently with people sort of not sure how concrete he is in that R1. And I tend to agree. It seems very difficult to pay up 180k from a basement player to get someone who may or may not last 3 rounds.
Yep.
So the other option is Conway for the Cats. I can't trust Geelong as far as I can throw them, so I have a bit of trouble, paying the extra 100,000 for someone who he's played 1 game in his career, and Geelong
it's tough.
Geelong.
You don't hear anything out of Geelong, do you?
So personally, I'm happy going with that cheap 200k, especially with the fact that we are having to potentially pay up in defence. I think we're going to need that cash for our on-field team to be looking half decent. So that's the way I'm leaning, but. Yeah, if someone puts their hands up and the value looks undeniable and there are other options that present themselves over the next few rounds, then we can potentially look at that. But yeah, I think the 200k is firming as my preferred option personally, just for cash.
There's no more talked about line this preseason than the forward line.
Forward line.
So structure-wise, do you see the forward line as dictating your overall structure, or is it the other way around now? Is our defense, with the lack of rookie options, dictating what we need to do in the forward line?
Yeah, well, the other thing about the forward line is there seems to be a bunch of rookies putting their hands up. You talk about Harley Reid's obviously been there all season, but your Caleb Windsor, who's been playing well. I think
he's playing well right
tonight.
now,
Charlie Lazaro, who's under 300k. Darcy Wilson looked pretty good in their Saints game. Sex Pistol, yes, Alex Sexton, who's a little bit more than a rookie price, but he's pretty cheap. So there's a few guys putting their hands up there. So Orazio Fantasia, another guy who played tonight, I haven't looked at his stats, but a few cheaper guys there that you can sell yourself a bit more than some of those defensive rookies.
Yeah.
So I think that is allowing us to go cheaper there in order to pay up in the other lines where we're not as confident. So that's where we talk about, rookies dictating our structure. Where are the rookies? I think this season so far, at least, it looks like they're in the forward line for the most part. So going 2 or 3 in your forward line and still having decent ones on your bench looks more possible in that line than any other line.
I know you were toying with this and are still somewhat toying with it.
Yo.
Is it a premium pick at F1 in terms of some people were or may still be looking at McRae? Obviously, people have the Flanders on the mind, even with that early buy. Do you see it as I'm picking a gun at F1 and then I'm speculating?
Yeah, I think I am leaning that way. There's still room for me to not, but it's gonna have to be because several players really put their hand up and say I need to be picked.
Yeah.
Than just me finding the cash to do something else elsewhere. Like again, if you sort of go through your team and pick the players that are most important first, and then fill in those spots that you're not too sure of. Flanders at this point right now is one of those early picks for me to say, I think I'm going to need him.
Yeah.
And I don't see so far like the James Jordans, the Cam McKenzies, the Nat Fifes, based on what we've seen before these Community Series games, saying, I absolutely need to be picked, and there's not enough room now for me to get Flanders in, plus all those rookies. I still think there's plenty of room for Flanders to be there. So that's how I'm kind of thinking about it at this stage. But we'll see. We'll see.
I know we've mentioned it a couple of times already, but the thing that does is allow you to pivot down if for whatever reason Flanders becomes undeniable, and you need to get him in, or it's McRae or something like that, then you have room to move there, I think, as well, which we've said a couple of times, but I think it's important.
Just on that, we haven't talked about McRae for a while, but he is 100% not starting in my team this year because I'm just shit scared of that hamstring. I also just don't see a world where his role is better with players like Sanders, James Harms coming into this team.
Yeah, you're a little jaded on McRae.
A little bit, but I feel very strongly that he should not be in anyone's starting scene.
I think it's contagious because I feel that way as well. But
yeah, I would not be going there, even though he obviously doesn't have the early buy. I'm just not in on McRae, even though he spent time in my team early season.
Let's kind of name a few of those, we'll call them those cheaper mid-price guys in the forward line. And then I also want to talk about how many of them can you have, because I think when these guys start popping their heads up, there's almost a temptation of, shit, I've got to catch them all.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you might end up with, as Minimug put it, 5 lottery tickets. And
you sold the house.
You're kind of wasting your money if you buy 5 lottery tickets.
Like we said, they could all work, but the chances are they're not all going to work, or they're not all going to work at the level that some of them will. Like, there'll be better ones, there'll be worse ones.
So, Fife, McKenzie, Powell, Fisher, Taylor Adams is a little bit more on the top end of that. Who else have we got that I'm
James
missing?
Jordan.
There? James Jordan goes.
You call Sexton a part of that kind of level. He's closer to 400k than 300k.
So, the names do start to...
There's a few rolling through there. Billing, some people like as well.
Connor McDonald's stock's down after the weekend.
Yeah, so he's probably down. There's a few.
3?
I think 3 is probably as much as I would go.
Okay.
I think 3...
So 3 and 2 rookies,
Yeah, 3 and 2 rookies, or if there's 3 obvious ones and you go a Flanders down to those 3, that's where it'd go. I'm also toying around with just having 2 and having 3 rookies there as well. Again, it's going to come down to these next few preseason games. Who's screaming pick me? Who's is there a person that emerges as the clear guy?
Okay.
Are there still question marks on all of them? Are there still question marks on some of them? There's a world where each one of them has a world where they're the guy. So I'm not really going to talk anyone in or out of any of them.
Yeah.
But just be wary of going too crazy, I think, because it's unlikely that they're all going to do what we want them to.
Yeah. Let's quickly jump over to the forward line and just see if we can do some fancy dancing in there and finish this team off.
Who do you like in the forward line? Is there someone that stands out to you just off your own?
I mean, Fisher looked very good in the half that he played the other day.
Played a half.
It is somewhat concerning, but I think they're just easing him back in. So I think Fisher stands out. Can we play around just, because some people might be, let's play around with the forward line where Fisher is F1. So where we don't...
Let's have a look and see what that looks like.
Let's say we're really averse to the Flanders buy.
Okay. So in that case, you're probably looking at the next guy maybe would be... I mean, are you looking at someone like, in this case, like a Tom Powell?
Okay, let's go Powell, then throw sort of like a Fife McKenzie combination or a Jordan in there.
Maybe
like
Jordan. We've got the
Fife
cash.
Jordan combination.
So this gives us with a bit of extra cash left over to play around. So this might be an option where if you wanted to do that...
take Wardlaw to
now, so now you could go Wardlaw up to, if you were looking for someone...
Let's go Nick Martin.
Yeah,
can we afford him?
Yeah, we can afford Nick Martin there. So we've got Nick Martin.
That doesn't look horrible.
So, yeah, I mean, that could be an option where if you are keen on some of those guys now, we've gone the 4 here now.
Yeah.
Which, look, like I said, I didn't want to go more than 3, but it's still a play. You can have a look at this.
Well, let's say instead, do you consider
26K.
Adams to be as risky as those 4 we've got there? Like, let's say we ditch Fisher or something and we put Adams there, or
I don't know if we're going to have the money to do that now. So 649.
Then
maybe if we went 5 down again, if we liked McKenzie, for example, he is a bit cheaper than some of the. Or we're looking for maybe this guy, the guy that people are all about, rightfully so. So say he sits there. Now I could afford that Taylor Adams pick. If I wanted to still have someone that I see as a premium, I've got 67K left over. If I wanted to maybe get someone up to that Darcy Wilson, I want to strengthen my bench up here, and that maybe makes me feel a bit better. Because we also got to remember our bench. Like, we don't want those rookies that are just going to be dead weight. So
you know what I've just realised this video is? It's a multiple team reveal.
It's a multiple team reveal. Yeah, it is. It's literally just what we do every afternoon, just fucking around with our team.
Here's like 8 different teams. Yeah. Pick your one you want.
But like, it's those kind of decisions that you're going to have to make in terms of like how much more do you like a Fife than a Sexton, and what does that cash afford you to do? And these are the kind of structure things that I'm playing around with. So
are we putting the clickbaity team reveal?
Maybe we should. Team reveal 3.0, 4.0, and 5.0. Just all 5.
Multiple team reveals. Get around it.
But yeah, I guess just some of these. I mean, if you haven't considered some of these structures in your team, then I would encourage you to at least play around with it and see what it looks like. Try the 3 rookie structure. See what that looks like. See what other players you can afford. Try the 2 rookie structure if you've had 3 there the whole time. Go with the cheaper ruck if you've been having a Marshall there and see what that can do. I would definitely encourage it as a good experiment before you. We all sit there with the structure we've had for the most of the preseason, and
I've just quickly crunched the numbers on that team, and it's good. It's
good.
It's going to be a winner. It's the Hilux.
It's the car winning team.
Thank you, Popowski. I'll just duck off camera. Thanks, Jaden. Yep. And I'm back. So it's good to still have him in the studio with us.
There you go. We've got him locked in our basement, it seems.
He's a good man.
Yeah, definitely have a play around with it. I would encourage it. Do you want to bring us back over onto the...
sorry, mate. I got us there, but I didn't bring us back on there.
That'll do for us today. Our next podcast, we're going to be reacting to all the community series games. That'll be a little bit later on the Sunday. Normally we drop it about that 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to drop it after that final game, which is the Saints and North Melbourne game. Must watch that one on Sunday.
Live show coming up in a few weeks. How many people are...
Oh, last I checked, we were closing on that 80 mark. So just a few more to get to that first target of 100. So if you haven't already, go hit that round 1 live show, which will be basically the first game is going to be Carlton Richmond. We're not picking many players in that game. So really...
But we'll still have some fun.
We'll still have some fun, right? But really that Friday night game... That's when fantasy starts. Ooh. So come around, get around us, grab your beers, knock off work early.
Or drink of your choice.
Drink of your choice. Knock off work early. Tell the boss you've got better things to do, and get around the Ball Boys live show. So,
I got to do the subscribe thing. Sorry, Mitch.
Yeah, 100%.
Where is it? Oh, it's already on there.
Yeah, like and subscribe, guys.
Let's go.
We've hit 2K. Let's aim for 3,000. Give this video a big thumbs up. Give us the 100 ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and review. We've been working very hard this preseason, so show us your love by hitting that subscribe, thumbs up button, and we will see you guys next time. Bye!